All right, folks. So we're back again, talking about World War One this time. No more beard, no more voice right now either. So here we go. This is really the beginning of world change. We look back on what we've talked about here recently, dealing with imperialism and industrial revolution. These are all buildups going towards World War One. So let's look at what really is going to happen here that caused World War One. We've kind of got the idea going already. All right, so we got to look at the causes. All right, and the easiest way to remember them is through the acronym MAIN, M-A-I-N. Each of these different letters will go with a different topic that really explains what the causes are and how we get to this massive world war that's going to cause terrible death and destruction throughout Europe. All right, so look at the M. The first M is militarism. Okay, let me move myself down a little bit. There we go. All right, militarism, the industrialization of the military. So you have new weapons being used, and really as industrialization is going forward and moving forward faster and faster and faster. Of course, it's not just for production of goods, but it's also production of weapons. So here you are with the growth of the Industrial Revolution, you're seeing submarines. Now, submarines had been used previously, the U-boat, but not as a combustion engine. They had been man-powered, but now they're going to be combustion engine U-boats that are going to be much more successful and won't sink as easy. All right, the advent of chlorine and mustard gas. All right, it's going to be very dangerous and used very effectively by both the British and the Germans, and it's going to cause massive death and destruction because of what it does to your body. The chlorine and mustard burns, and it burns your lungs, and to the point where you can't breathe and essentially you suffocate. All right, the machine gun. Now, the machine gun had been invented about 15 years previous and was used in the Spanish-American War, but it wasn't mechanized. Now it's mechanized, and the machine gun is really going to make a difference. The Maxim gun, the Maxim gun had been used in imperialism, and that was one of the biggest ways that they separated themselves and they were able to take over the natives, because they didn't have them obviously. But now with machine guns, it's a killing machine that's easy and rapid, to the point where they didn't have to fire. They didn't have to see what they were firing, just move it back and forth. The movement of tanks. All right, tanks didn't move very fast. They moved about 4 or 5 miles an hour during World War One, but it was easy to get across the trenches against this rough terrain and get through forests. The tanks became effective technology during this time. And of course, by World War II, tanks are moving at 55, 60 miles an hour. So that technology there is massive. All right, gas masks to protect against the gas. Every soldier carried a gas mask on the front of their body, right in a little box, and they knew to put it on, and they would fight with the gas mask on to protect themselves from the mustard gas, the chlorine. And of course, airplanes. In 1903, the Wright brothers have invented the airplane, and they fly, a few hundred feet. But by 1914, 1915, airplanes are going to be very effective in World War One. The flying aces are going to be huge. All right, but the airplanes are going to be used not just to be able to see above the ground, but they're actually going to have air warfare as we move along. So you have this mechanization of the military that becomes very, very important during World War One. All right, here are a couple pictures, a couple versions of these new machines that were used. All right, the second one are alliances, the A. All right, an alliance is countries coming together and forming agreements, and this can be a really big problem. When we look at World War One, you got to think of it like a massive street fight. There are a few main competitors that are in there fighting, but all of a sudden, because of agreements between countries and other countries, they're all going to jump in. At one point, I can't believe it, remember, it was Ecuador or Colombia jumps in on November 10th, 1918, the day before the war ends, and they declare war against Germany, even though the war's going to end the next day, just because they wanted to be in on being victorious. All right, so you have all these alliances that are going to become a tangled web, and it's going to make for a very confusing war, and how many countries are actually brought into the mix. And there's going to be a ton of them that actually fight. Again, it's a world war, so it's not just in Europe. It's going to be in North Africa, it's going to be in the Middle East, and it's going to be in Manchuria and China, because that's where the Japanese are going to be involved. So this war is going all over the world, which is why it is a world war. All right, the I, something we've been spending time on, the imperialism. Okay, European countries are competing for colonies, are competing for resources and markets, and it's one that wants to be better than the other. And the thing you got to understand too here is really the main combatants in this war, the British, the Germans, and the Russians. Aside from the French, they're all related to one another. This is like one big family feud. And it's been that way because they wanted to be in competition with each other, trying to build up and become very valuable, become powerful. Even the Ottoman Turks, which is a secular group of Muslims that were in the East, they're taking over parts of southeastern Europe and parts of the Middle East that they want control of, and they want to be relevant, even though their relevance is falling off the table. All right, so you have these countries that are coming together, and really all these agreements they made, whether it be the Congress of Vienna or the Berlin Conference, are irrelevant anymore because they don't stick to them. They keep fighting. And a good example is the Crimean War. And then finally, the end, nationalism. We've talked about this before, the pride in one country. All right, they're competing with each other. It's constant competition. Who's going to be better than the next person? So this pride in their country really wants them to stop. If you go back to the readings that we did in class, it talks about how the Germans wanted to stop the French and stop the British, and they didn't want to be like them. They want to be better than them. And that pride is going to carry over, which is why when we get to World War I, it is like a big family feud because that pride becomes more important than anything else. At one point during World War I, the soldiers don't even know why they're fighting. They're there because their leadership has told them to be there. And really, there's a lot of unity amongst the soldiers from different countries, even though they're proud to be German, whatever the case may be. They kind of understand they're in the same issues because it's more of these old men sitting in the ivory tower making decisions for them and their national pride that becomes a big, big issue. So all these causes are going to lead to this blowing up, and it's going to take a spark. We're going to get to that spark here in a little bit, but it's going to blow up into this massive war. A lot of countries are going to get involved. Now understand, one country I haven't talked about yet is the United States. They're not in this right yet. They're going through a period of isolationism where they're staying out of European conflict. Of course, they will be brought in much later. Okay, so to understand where this goes, well, the alliance issue is that Germany forms an alliance well in advance of World War I to go against France. Okay, so here we are with the cause of alliance that goes along with the cause of nationalism and trying to stop France. So what Otto von Bismarck is going to do is he's going to unite some countries in what is called the Triple Alliance. Okay, and of course there's going to be 3 countries involved, and it's going to be Germany, right there in Central Europe. It's going to be the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, who has a lot of control over Eastern Europe, and then it's going to be Italy, and Italy is in Central Southern Europe, right near Germany. And again, there's this hatred for France. There's this idea that Germany and Italy are both newly unified countries. You have a Kaiser in Germany, you have a king in the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary, and you have a king in Italy. So there's a lot of commonality in this triple alliance that Otto von Bismarck is going to set up. So in response, of course, France is going to create their own alliance with 3 countries. They're going to have England, which has been their natural enemy, but understanding that they have a natural hatred for Germany, they're going to join together, and then they're going to join up with Russia. And of course, Russia is a massive country. They're a little bit behind industrialized and being industrialized, but they definitely don't want Germany to spread out anymore. So they're going to line up with France, and it's going to cause an issue for Germany. Now, this alliance is going to be called the Triple Entente. And the Triple Entente essentially means agreement between the countries, okay? So understand when you talk about the alliances, and there's going to be really 4 alliances you're going to have to know here in this World War I period. And it starts with the Triple Alliance versus the Triple Entente, and then it'll eventually change. But these are agreements to come together, and this is the web of issues that you're going to see and we're going to run into. So what France really wants to do is that if they're on the west half of Germany and the Russians on the eastern half of Germany, Germany's got to figure out who they're going to fight. If they do go to war, who are they going to fight? Because now they might have to fight a 2-front war, which would split the military, and that really gives France and Russia a major, major advantage. And you can see here's a map of Europe pre-World War I. Okay, so you have Germany, you see how large it is at this point, and it is bordered by Russia on the east. And of course, they have the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is their ally, that's going to want control of this area as well. You have Italy in the south, you have France on Germany's west, of course, with what will be their eventual ally, Belgium, and then you have Great Britain here. This is the area down here where the war is really going to get started and become a major, major issue. And of course, you have the Ottomans down to the southeast that want to still be a player on the grand stage, even though they are weakening. These are actually called the sick man of Europe, simply because they are not as strong as they had once been, and their empire is slowly minimizing. All right, so let's look at that Balkan area, the powder keg of Europe. I mean, think about what a powder keg does when it gets a spark. It goes boom very, very loudly. And if you can see here, you have the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that dual monarchy, and you can see where the lines are drawn, places like Belgrade and Sarajevo down here in the southwest that are major important cities to the control of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then, of course, you have Serbia, which is going to be a major player here. Sorry, folks, I had to go blow my nose. All right, so here we are, the Balkans. Now, these were a group of countries that were trying to get away from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Again, you're talking about nationalism as a major key here to World War I, and it's this nationalism that wants to drive independence. And these countries down here in the Balkans want to be independent from what is going on in the dual monarchy. And a lot of it comes back to ethnic feelings. You gotta understand, you have different religions down there, you have different ethnicities, you have different types of cultures down there, and they're all wrapped into the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was not effectively leading them and letting them be who they were. So they wanted to go back to what it was like in the Middle Ages for them, where they were independent, powerful countries and very strong countries that want to live how they want to live on their own. And nationalism, again, that becomes a really big key to this issue down in the Balkans. So, obviously, the main issue I mentioned before is between Austria-Hungary, and Serbia. All right, Serbia being the one who's most independent, they're going to have a group that is going to fight for independence and try to break away from the dual monarchy. So, Austria-Hungary did not want to relinquish Serbia, of course, its land and territory and resources and its control over people. And Serbia felt they should be independent. I mean, those are big deals here. So, what's going to happen is this. The Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand, now he's the next person in line to be in control of Austria-Hungary, is going to go down to Sarajevo, which is a city in Bosnia, which is part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And he's been told not to go there because it's a very volatile city. It's violent. They don't particularly care much for the Austro-Hungarians. But he goes down there anyway because he wants to see how the soldiers are training, what's going on. All right, so when he gets down there, they're going to have a big parade for him. And like they do, and the parade route is printed in the newspaper so people know where the Archduke is going to be. So, while he's down there, what he doesn't know is that there is a secret society called the Black Hand that is waiting for him, that they have been planning for his visit for many months now in preparation for what they're going to do. All right, so this hatred, this support from Serbia by the Black Hand, this hatred of Austria-Hungary is going to start the war. And you think about it here, what you got to understand, you have a very minor leader in a second or third tier country who is going to go and get killed essentially by an even lower country that's going to start the worst war that history has ever seen up to this point. All right, so what the Black Hand Society is going to do is assassinate the Archduke. And what they planned on doing was going along the parade route and actually throwing a grenade into the Archduke's car. But what they forgot to realize is that when the grenade is thrown, it was a pump grenade, which gives a 10-second delay. And when the grenade hit the car, it bounced off and rolled away and blew up later, not killing the Archduke. All right, so when that happens, the whole assassination plot falls apart, and all the Black Hand members kind of disperse. Well, the one person who's actually going to go through with it is a guy by the name of Prinsep. And Prinsep, very distraught, goes to a cafe to sit down and have a cup of coffee because he's very upset. And it just so happens that the Archduke gets lost on his route and rolls right in front of the cafe. And Gavrilo Princip jumps out of his cafe with a gun and shoots the Archduke in the neck and shoots his wife in the stomach, killing them both. And of course, that's the one thing that's going to start this whole World War I issue, is an assassination of a very minor leader. You can watch this video, you can watch it in class later, okay? So, in response, a few days later, Austria-Hungary was going to declare war on Serbia. Serbia, who's in alliance with Russia, will draw them into war. Of course, Germany, who is in alliance with Austria-Hungary, is going to declare war on France, Russia, and Belgium, which will draw England into war. and you have the beginning of World War One.